Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, Sunnyvale. The days are definitely getting cooler, and definitely it's been a cold few days as far as October is concerned. It's Halloween, and as you go around the city, you'll definitely start seeing more Halloween decorations. People are ready for the holidays, especially that first holiday after the pandemic. So, anyway, I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Thank you for joining me again this week for my weekly virtual office hour address. This is the 82nd installment. I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy. We have now reached 571 days since the March 16th, 2020 county health order started the shelter in place in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID 19. Things are definitely looking a little bit better. A year and a half ago, I converted my coffee shop hours that I happened every week on Murphy Avenue into this weekly live stream address. I haven't missed a week since. And now I'm actually following up the live stream address with in-person meetings. So if you are interested in meeting with the mayor, just email me and you can reserve a 15-minute or 30-minute time slot, or just drop in if you have a quick question or comment. But people really say they enjoy these sessions because they like hearing from their mayor, and they're good for me because they allow me to look back at the last few weeks and then provide you some updates and news, answer some of your questions, and of course, pass on some general words of encouragement. So, thank you for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for Sunnyvale in a very difficult time, but happy that we are finally starting to move forward. A few months ago, I started changing my background art every week with art provided by Sunnyvale artists. So today's piece is called Reverie, and it's by Gita Taneja. So Gita's given us several pieces of art in the past. So if you want to purchase that piece of art, definitely reach out to me and I'll put you in contact with that artist. Okay, let's go ahead and get started and talk about what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last 2 weeks. Last Tuesday night, city council met. We went past midnight and, we started out recognizing October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And basically, it was good because it really is important to raise that awareness. Breast cancer will affect approximately 1 in 8 women in their lifetimes, but it's to focus. And last week we mainly focused on the importance of mammography, and it's really the importance of early detection when tumors are really most treatable. We've actually seen a decline in breast cancer fatalities in the last few years, and mainly because early detection. So that's just as a reminder. Bobby Smyrny, who manages a local organization providing education and ultimately relief and help to people that are going through or have gone through breast cancer, was the awardee for that certificate. And definitely, if you have anyone in your life that needs education, needs support, feel free to reach out to me and I'll put you in contact with her organization. And then as far as general business is concerned, council approved a proposal to remove parking along Sunnyvale Avenue, depending on what portion of Sunnyvale Avenue, looking basically from Maud to Hendy. So from Maud to Arquez, we removed parking on just one side of the street, so on the east side of the street, and there's still parking on the west side. And then we removed all parking from California Avenue to Hendy Avenue. So there's a lot of public comment, and we received lots of letters on both sides of that issue. Ultimately, council, decided that removing part of that parking and then creating buffered bike lanes was going to be safest. And this really filled an important spine for bike travel within the city. So from Maud going up Borregas into Moffett Park, there are bike lanes and bike bridges over 101, 237. Evelyn going south all the way to the Cupertino border, there's bike lanes. And so this was an area where we didn't have bike lanes. And I think it's really important to create that safety. And that's one of the things that council has multiple policies, Vision Zero, Complete Streets, Active Transportation Plan last year identified this as a critical place. And ultimately our goal was to get that 10% active transportation share by 2030. So getting people out of their cars, getting them walking, biking, however you can. But ultimately, especially next to an elementary school, I think it was really important to provide those buffered bike lanes. And no other way we can get an all ages, all abilities bike lane with that buffer without removing a certain amount of street parking. And so, that's always a barrier. People consider that the public parking in front of their house is their private parking. And, I've heard from neighbors that it's like, how dare you park in front of our house? That being said, we have rules that, residents need to move their car every 72 hours if they're parked in the public right of way. But that being said, it isn't private parking. And so we're looking at ways to remind residents that that's the case. And, ultimately, I think it's really important that people realize it's a shared resource. And ultimately, especially like in this area, it was important to make it safer for bicyclists going through that area. So anyway, it was difficult. We've had I've got a few questions that I'll follow up on here, but it's trying to make that corridor as safe as possible, and we continue to upgrade as we restripe streets and look at other ways from a city standpoint to fund, adding bike lanes to make things safer, adding ADA curb cuts and everything else. Anyway, council also approved that night 2 general plan amendments. So ultimately what this is doing is GPIs. It's an investigation to change our general plan for zoning in certain areas in the city. And so developers, landowners can come to us and actually do that request, saying we would like to change the zoning on this property. And one of them was looking at an applied materials research campus on Arquez. And so that's just east of the Apple campus at Central and Wolf. But there's already an applied materials research facility there. They're looking at expanding it and kind of growing it. But it's about 63 acres that they're currently evaluating. And we're going kind of beyond that to kind of look at what makes sense for that general area. And then the other piece of land that we're looking at is looking at new housing and commercial on Wolf Road right near Fremont. So where the Wendy's is, where the empty lot has been for about 30 years, and that gas station. So, ultimately council gave that direction to city staff and approved the evaluation. And it's not that it's there's no presupposition that those will be approved. It's that for city staff to look at alternate zoning there, how that land can best be used. Ultimately, the developer is the one who pays for those investigations. So those are normally done with contractors, with city staff giving that direction on what they would like to look at, and then those studies go off and come back to city staff and council at a later date. And land use, a lot of land use was set up years and years ago, and so ultimately, it'll be interesting to see what those studies come back when they come back to council. Last Thursday, President Biden signed the Congress's stopgap measure to avert a shutdown and extend the government funding through December 3rd. So, government funding was set to expire last week. And so the bill kind of passed the buck a little bit, just by a few months, but both the House and the Senate were both in agreement, so it was a bipartisan vote. It's always good to see them actually working together as far as that's concerned. And then last Thursday, The infrastructure bill, at least was they were hoping to vote on that, but Speaker Pelosi decided putting that $3.5 trillion climate infrastructure bill, decided she didn't want to put that on the floor. And so this was, because certain portions of the Democratic Party rebelled in delaying kind of the consideration until a deal was struck on both the reconciliation bill and the infrastructure bill. So we'll see where that goes. There's been a lot of discussions this week. President Biden has been working with leaders in both parties to try to reach some accord and create an overall bill of those two that people can agree with. So we'll see where that goes. And then last Thursday evening, there was a redistricting commission meeting, and it was mainly about map training and map making. So that workshop is just to educate residents on how to draw those district lines. And this is one of the things that we did about 2 years ago when we moved towards district elections and split the city into 6 different districts. But ultimately, after the census 2020, we need to come back and go through and adjust those lines slightly based upon our numbers. And so if you want to get involved, if you want to learn how to submit maps, how to make those maps, you can go to sunnyvale.ca.gov/redistricting. So hopefully, you can get involved. We've had multiple outreach meetings on what our areas of interest are in the city. And ultimately, as we get the 2020 census data, it's then going back and adjusting those lines appropriately. And then last Friday, Governor Newsom announced that California would be the first state in the nation to mandate requiring all eligible students be vaccinated against COVID-19 in order to attend in-person classes for both public and for private schools. And so, there are lots of questions. It's still to a large degree early, for those 12 and older, and a lot of this hasn't been put in place yet. And then there are exemptions, basically medical reasons, personal and or religious beliefs. And so all that still needs to be worked out, of course. And, as far as vaccinations for those that are under 12, it was submitted, I think, yesterday, the possibility from a Pfizer study that's been done. So we'll see how quickly the FDA goes through that approval process for children. Definitely there's been lots of discussions I've heard from parents on both sides of this matter. And so definitely the exemptions are important. The governor was definitely worried about trying to make that cut too quickly. And so we'll see. Masks are still mandated, which I think is one of the important things. It's important, of course, that the kids get back in person, because at the end of the day, that's really important from a standpoint of just social interaction and kind of what's been lost from a learning standpoint over the last year and a half. And the vast majority of school districts have reported that 95% of the students have returned to in-person instruction this school year. So we are seeing a lot of people and a lot of happy parents that their kids are now back in school, which I think is really critical. And then, of course, last weekend was our 47th annual Sunnyvale Art and Wine Festival. And so I visited both Saturday and Sunday. And it was art from local artists as well as, those from around the Bay. There was wine and beer and music, and it was non-live music except for 2 performances each day at 3 p.m. But I saw a lot of people out there enjoying the bands, and I think, ultimately next year it'll be even better. But it was great seeing everybody out. Saw a lot of friends, saw a lot of people I hadn't seen for a while. And the Art and Wine Festival will be back in June as normal. So looking forward to that and kind of expanding that. But it was good from a lot of things because it also focused on downtown restaurants. So there just wasn't a lot of food booths, um, selling food. A lot of our downtown restaurants had special takeaway items, and then of course, as far as Murphy Avenue, it was packed with people enjoying the outdoor seating, and I think that will be even better next June. So happy to see that tradition return to Sunnyvale, and glad to be out and glad to see everyone that said hi. All this week, of course, has been Fleet Week in San Francisco, so we've been seeing a lot more planes overhead and landing at Moffett Field, and a good variety of planes as far as that's concerned. So definitely, it wraps up in the next few days, but it's been good to see some of the planes that have been landing and taking off at Moffett Field. On Tuesday of this week, Santa Clara Board of Supervisors met and they voted to move forward with plans to buy the Crestview Hotel in Mountain View. And so the Crestview is just beyond the Sunnyvale border on El Camino Real. And the proposal is to convert the Crestview into permanent housing for people that were previously homeless. And the hotel, it has, I think, 66 rooms on just over about almost an acre and a half. But the county will focus on getting state home key funds to help with that project. Ultimately, what that project is hasn't been finalized, whether or not it would be transitionary housing or permanent housing. I've talked to several supervisors on that, and and that still needs to be finalized from a certain standpoint. But from a project standpoint, it's still getting certain funds from Mountain View to help refurbishing the hotel, and then the county looking at the long-term operation and purchasing that. So we'll see how quickly that moves through, but the supervisors did kind of direct that to move forward. Let's see. And then on Wednesday night, council had a joint virtual meeting with Valley Water. And so we have these meetings every year or two to get updates and looking for ways to really collaborate. So there were several presentations from Valley Water staff. Of course, the biggest one was the report and an update on the drought response. And so Sunnyvale residents have really been doing pretty well as far as cutting back on their water usage as far as that's concerned. But ultimately there's still more measures to take place, and Valley Water is focusing on programs to convert grass and lawns into drought resistant landscape. Ultimately doing rainwater collection, whatever we can do to save water when we do have it, and then reduce the overall usage as much as possible. And we also got an update on Valley Water's Purified Water Program, and this is to refill groundwater. We heard about the Anderson Reservoir, and that won't be fully complete until 2030. So it's going to be, that's going to stay relatively low, even if we have a lot of rainy seasons. The reservoir is one of the main sources for the county. One of the other is groundwater, and so 40% of the water that's used in the county is from the groundwater and wells. And of course, the Valley Water is looking at how we refill those aquifers, and so that refill of the groundwater is really important. And so they're working with San Jose, they're working with Palo Alto, they're working with us on looking at ways to improve the amount of effluent to go into the ground. So that's an ongoing project that they have, just trying to make sure that our groundwater reserves actually are maintained at a good level. And then they also gave an update on the South San Francisco Bay Shoreline project. So this is working with the Army Corps of Engineers to deal with sea level rise. Phase one is basically San Jose, Alviso, a little bit of Milpitas. Phase two is Palo Alto and Mountain View, and we're phase three, and it's just trying to figure out how we can advocate for making sure that that's complete as quickly as possible, what's going to be done there. Our study hasn't been fully kicked off yet, so that's, an issue that we need to deal with, but that's, one of the things that I do as mayor is, meet with our state and federal representatives, as well as federal organizations like the Army Corps of Engineers, to make sure that we get the appropriate focus that we need for our problems. And then the last thing they gave was an update on the Sunnyvale East and West Channel Flood Protection Project, as far as what they're doing to reduce the chance of flooding, for that 100-year storm, but also just how we improve those channels for the riparian wildlife that's needed there. So ultimately, it's making sure that it's more walkable and bikeable. So making sure that those channels are better used by residents, by people in the business park, and then of course the other thing is making it better for wildlife, making sure that ultimately when there's large storms that water that area around there is protected. So all those are kind of their focus, and the next step of that flood protection project, Google has been very collaborative at trying to make sure that what they're currently planned to do along Caribbean really works with how it attaches to the Bay Trail, how to make sure that those channels are that much better. So lots of work going on in the background as far as that's concerned, and it was good to get that update. And then finally, Sunnyvale City staff gave several updates on our projects. Of course, the Moffett Park specific plan, which talks a little bit about those east and west channels, but also the housing, the office space, the retail that we're looking at putting into Moffett Park and what makes sense. And then finally, our Sunnyvale Clean Water Program, the city's biggest project in its history, kind of a 20-year project to redo our wastewater treatment plant. Phase one is actually very close to finishing, and we'll be starting on phase two soon. But I'll give you some updates on that at a future discussion. And then, of course, yesterday was a big day from a Senate standpoint. They actually voted to extend the national debt ceiling through early December. So another early December issue that's going to be there. But Democrats and Republicans reached a deal earlier than, I think it was set to expire on the end of October. So they sped it up by a few weeks, didn't wait till the very last minute to approve something. But ultimately it's been deadlocked for several weeks, and they at least pushed that to the beginning of December. So we'll see between the spending bill and the debt ceiling, all this will be re-examined over the next month and a half or so as we head towards December, and hopefully they can reach some agreement. It will go, I think, goes to the House today, and then it'll go to President Biden for signatures. But they're still wrangling the infrastructure and reconciliation bill, but it's good to see bipartisan progress happening in Congress, and so hopefully that will move forward. And then yesterday, from a local standpoint, the health officials from 8 Bay Area counties announced that they will lift indoor mask mandates when a series of criteria are met. So this is Santa Cruz lifted its mandates, I think, last week. So they're kind of the first of the counties to do that. But the other 8 counties got together to figure out what required criteria would need to be done in order to reduce the requirements for masks. And ultimately, they did reach a consensus But the lifting the mask mandate requirement is still required certain things from a state standpoint. So, you know, there's things that the counties can do, and then there's things that the state legislated. So when a jurisdiction reaches moderate, and that's kind of yellow COVID-19 transmission tier as defined by the CDC, and that's one of the things that Santa Cruz met, I think, 2 weeks ago. But the new standard is when they meet that for 3 weeks, or at least 3 weeks, and COVID hospitalizations are low and stable in the judgment of the health officer, and 80% of the jurisdiction's total population is fully vaccinated, then there would be the concept of moving into that reduced mask restriction. And so currently, you know, Santa Clara County, other counties are still in the orange or substantial tier, and doesn't look like they'll be moving into the yellow tier anytime relatively soon, but could be within the next month or so, and then it would be 3 weeks past that date of moving into the tier as we continue to monitor what the COVID rates are. But you know, the surge is now, of course, receding, and the Bay Area is one of the most vaccinated regions in the country. So it's important that we start planning for that transition to make sure that our businesses have, you know, some pre-knowledge on what the changes are going to be, and you know, of course, that lifting of restrictions wouldn't prevent a mask mandate by those businesses, nonprofits, churches on their own, but it would allow, you know, it would remove the county order from that standpoint. And you know, the state still requires, and that won't change, face coverings for everyone in certain situations, regardless of your vaccine status. If you're in healthcare facilities, if you're on public transit, and if you're in adult or senior care facilities, masks are still required and will be required regardless of what the county health order is. But and also, of course, there's masking guidelines for our schools, you know, K through 12, and so none of these would be affected by the local health order. So from that standpoint, you know, it's critical that, you know, we look forward to hopefully opening up, that COVID, that there isn't a new variant, that things between vaccinations and all the hard work that we've done over the last year and a half, between those things, things will start opening up in a bigger way. So we can keep our fingers crossed as far as that's concerned. And from that standpoint, let's go ahead and get to those COVID numbers. You know, from a county standpoint, you know, things are looking good. From a national standpoint, things are looking better. They're stabilizing. We just have under nationally 44 million cases, increased another 700,000. It's down from 800,000 last week. So we're slowly seeing things level off. You know, we've had 216 million vaccinated with at least one dose. So that's 78% of adults, and 67% of adults are fully vaccinated. And then, as from a death toll standpoint, we've surpassed 700,000 deaths, and that's up 13,000 deaths just in the last week. So we're still having people that are dying, that are still contracting and dying from COVID-19, but it is slowly reducing. And then from a California standpoint, we've had 4.5 million positive cases. That's about 5,500 cases a day now. That's down from 6,500 just last week. So I think we're the best state in the nation per capita on the new number of cases that are happening. And California has had about over 69,000 fatalities, up another 700 deaths in the last week. And we've had about over 50 million vaccines administered. So almost another 900,000 just in the last week. You know, from a state standpoint, we're still at number 10 on comparing us with other states with at least 72% of the 72% of the residents that are vaccinated with at least one shot, and then we've improved to number 15 with 60% of our residents that are fully vaccinated. So that's positive. The county continues to be amazing. Yesterday, the county reported a cumulative count of 142,000 cases. That's up 900 since last week. That's down from 1,200 a week ago, so we're now under 1,000 a week, which is good. And then we've had over 1,800 deaths in the county, so additional 10 deaths in the last week. But our vaccination rate is really high. 89% of the county, 12 and older, not just adults, but 89% in the county have at least one dose. So everyone currently eligible, and 84% of those 12 and older are fully vaccinated. So we're doing fantastic as far as that's concerned. And I continue to do a lot of advocating on our city's behalf with the county. At the county level, if you need to get testing, you can go to sccfreetest.org and find one of the many locations around the county to get tested. As for getting vaccinated, the county keeps having pop-up locations within our city. So they have drop-in vaccination clinics around the county. So if you need to find one of those, you can go to sccfreevax.org and find those locations. They'll have a pop-up location at El Dorado Mobile Home Community on Saturday, October 23rd. So that's upcoming as far as that's concerned. So if you need to get your vaccination, if you haven't got vaccinated, or if you need to get your booster, for those that are eligible for boosters, definitely you can come to that. And there's other pop-ups around the county, around the city, over the month of October. Let me go ahead and get to some of the upcoming events. Tomorrow is the Sunnyvale State of the City, and this is the yearly update and community awards event. The event is being reduced by COVID. Last year it was completely virtual. This year it's by invite only, so we planned this months ago. So we kept it as a lot smaller because of COVID. We're holding it outdoors, but we're trying to make sure that we didn't get too many people. So definitely it's good to get some people, getting to see some council members, some commissioners. So we're basically, a lot of the commissioners are attending, and a lot of the award winners that received awards last year are coming for the in-person event, as well as the new community award winners. So that'll happen tomorrow. You'll see a video released later this weekend, and then next week there'll be more videos on the different award recipients that from the Mayor's Award to the Resident of the Year, and there's multiple awards that we'll be giving out tomorrow. And so definitely keep looking at the feed in the city feed on who those award recipients are. As far as this weekend is extra dumping days at the Smart Station. So Sunnyvale residents can stop by this weekend. It was also last weekend, but I forgot to mention it. But they can stop by from 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. and get rid of any extra garbage at no charge. All you need to do is show your proof of residency and bring a buddy if you have anything extra heavy to move. And then in 2 weeks, our new REI Sunnyvale store will finally open. So it'll be opening up on Friday, October 22nd. Their grand opening celebration will actually happen a week later, after they've made sure that everything is stable within the store. But the grand opening celebration will happen on the weekend of October 29th. So October 29th, 30th, 31st. And there'll be giveaways and vendors and music and more on that big grand opening celebration weekend. But really happy that they decided to move into our city, and looking forward to for them to be a community partner, which REI is really good about. So happy that they'll be in our city. And then October 30th is a Sunnyvale Diwali event at the Sunnyvale Community Center. And of course, Diwali is the festival of lights for our Indian community. It coincides with the harvest and some New Year celebrations, but it's a festival kind of new beginnings and the triumph over light over darkness. And so looking forward to that event. That'll be happening at the Senior Center. And then Sunday, October 31st is the Halloween Pet Parade. And so ultimately that's we had it virtually. So we had it for the first time in multiple years, 2 years ago. So that was nice to have, kids in costumes, pets in costumes, going from Redwood Square down Murphy Avenue, ending up at Plaza del Sol. But we'll have it again. Last year, of course, it was all virtual. So it was a video stream of people and families with their pets and kids in costumes and all that. But what will ultimately happen is this year we'll be back in person, and it'll be good to celebrate from that standpoint what is going to be what I think is actually a good celebration. It's kind of a small town parade that it's surprising that Sunnyvale doesn't have that yearly parade. So ultimately, it's good to get back on that kind of normality to some degree. And then in November, ice skating is returning to Sunnyvale. So November 19th through the 22nd in the Macy's parking lot right next to Washington Avenue. There will be, City Line is bringing back the ice skating rink. So looking forward to that all being outside right there next to Murphy Avenue. I think it'll be a great feeling as far as that's concerned. And then as far as council meetings, our next council meeting is Tuesday, October 12th, and there will be two things on the agenda. One is approving the transfer of 5 general fund parcels into the Housing Mitigation Fund, and this is for the site at Matilda, Iowa, and Charles. So this is the related site that ultimately is looking to do affordable housing on city-owned property. So doing a long-term lease and making sure that that development will hopefully kick off later this year, but it's 90 units for developmentally disabled and previously homeless, low-income residents. So that I think is good. And then the other thing is we're considering the Sunnyvale Historical Society's proposed addition to the museum. And so that'll also be happening on that date. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly questions. Oh yeah, Kathleen, so this is a redux. Kathleen asked, why did City Council not consider Sharrows on North Sunnyvale Avenue just between Arquez and Taylor? There have been 0 bicycle pedestrian accidents in this section. And currently, between El Camino Real and Evelyn, there are many different styles of bike lanes along Sunnyvale Avenue. Why not make this one modification to the BPAC plan? So at the end of the day, make Sharrows, transferring from bike lanes to Sharrows to bike lanes isn't the preferable thing. You want to try to keep, and this is, yes, you see as different segments of bike lanes were installed within the city. We've seen a lot of different designs. But ultimately, those, especially right next to Ellis, going from bike lanes into Sharrows and bike lanes wouldn't have been the safest thing for the students. And that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that biking is safe for people of all ages and abilities, and that bike lane goal is part of the active transportation plan. And there are even better, bike lanes as far as that's concerned, but those buffered bike lanes that were proposed and approved by council will make it a lot safer for everyone who bikes along that corridor. And staff continues to evaluate our existing bike lanes as we do restriping to see if we can actually make them buffered, make it a little bit safer as far as that's concerned, like we've already done on certain parts of Matilda. So we'll continue to see that, but it's following those best practices and making sure that it's safe for people that want, and especially kids that want to bike on those bike lanes. Agnes asked, also on the Sunnyvale bike lanes, I was wondering as why the option of slowing down the street was not considered. So we're constantly getting requests from residents to slow down the traffic, and that is part of the things that we evaluate. So there's a whole approval process for traffic calming, and definitely traffic calming assists. That being said, making sure that reducing the areas where bicyclists interact with cars is one of the safest things we can do. So putting that buffered bike lanes were good. One of the things that residents can always do is start that traffic calming process, and there's a whole process that if you want to look at traffic calming, all you need to do is fill out, get a petition. There's a whole petition process of what the residents want to do, and then there's an evaluation of what the traffic speeds are, what the number of cars are on the different streets, and then looking at temporary measures and conceivably moving on to permanent measures. And we've seen that done at several locations around Sunnyvale over the years. Susan asked, any updates on the Target store reopening? So Target is in the middle of their work to fix their fireproofing as far as that store is concerned. Staff has approved the majority of those plans, and now it's just getting the work done. We're hoping, keeping our fingers crossed, that the Target will be open by Thanksgiving, hopefully sooner, but initially it was not going to be until 2022, and with everything that it's in everyone's interest to open that as quickly as possible. Melinda asked, please tell me you're cutting the ribbon on the new Sunnyvale REI store sometime soon. Yeah, as I said earlier, Sunnyvale REI opens in 2 weeks, and then the external work on the store, if you go by, has already been complete. They're hard at work on the interior, and then the Mountain View store closes permanently on Sunday, October 17th, and then they transfer whatever remaining items that they wanted to transfer between the two stores. This store is actually bigger than the other store, so that they will have lots of new things here. And then the Sunnyvale store will open on Friday, October 22nd, 2 weeks from now, and then the big celebration happens 3 weeks from now, on October 29th. So lots happening as far as that's concerned. Jean asked, did they move the dates for Arden Wine? I always remember at the beginning of June and missed it this year. So sorry for those that didn't make it to Arden Wine last weekend. It was a little bit smaller because of COVID. They moved the dates from June to October. Because in June we are, especially in planning for June, during the spring, the concept of having an outdoor event was still a big unknown. The state hadn't set all the requirements. There were still lots of questions on how quickly people would be vaccinated and how that would affect transmission rates. So the chamber did, decide finally that yes, let's do a scaled down version. And I think it worked out really well. And the chamber focused on using local restaurants to provide food, and supporting our local restaurants is really important. And then having that Arden Wine along that, reducing the amount of music. That being said, they are looking forward. I talked to Don Mayer, who's in charge of the chamber, and they're already looking forward to our June event. And it was a little bit smaller. It wasn't as well publicized. It was successful. Lots of people there. But the amount of what a lot of times there's publications throughout the county in highlighting that this is an upcoming event. They wanted to keep it a little bit smaller, and I think it worked out. It was busy, but not the overabundance of crowds that we have sometimes during the Art and Wine Festival, especially staying for the music and the live music. And I think that was one of the reasons why they reduced it to one band at 3 p.m. each day. So it was a little bit scaled down, but we're all looking forward to expanding it again next year to a larger footprint. Leslie asked, are there any plans on keeping downtown pedestrian only after the pandemic? It's just been so pleasant to have the whole street blocked off. And yes, as I said before, that is the plan to keep downtown closed at least until the end of the year, and then we're currently planning to study it, the long-term closure next year. So I've only heard positive things, and so council directed this to keep that closed until the end of the year. We'll continue to re-examine that, but I've only heard positive things. And please keep telling your businesses that you like the street closed. Please email council@sunnyvale.ca.gov and the city manager at citymgr@sunnyvale.ca.gov, just to do that positive reinforcement. And I think I've received some well thought out letters in the last few weeks. Thank you for everyone who's written. It does make a difference, and ultimately it's positive from that standpoint to hear what people want, and to hear the kind of that positive response as far as the downtown is concerned. Let me see if I have any comments or any questions in the comments. 1 second. Don't see any questions. So, okay, I think that's it for this week. Definitely, you can always reach out to me. But let's go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for joining me again. I'm really proud of our city, especially over the last year and a half. Residents helping others, donating food and clothes, helping deliver medication and food to those that are sheltering in place, just pulling together wherever they can. This is what makes being mayor of such a wonderful city, really a great experience. So, the future continues to be certain or uncertain, but certainly your actions make a difference. New issues come up every day, and one of the things that I've been proudest most of is, groups pulling together, residents pulling together, making sure that we make it through this. And, Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together. We will get through this together. So thanks for listening. Take care. Have a great weekend. See you next week. Goodbye.